I'm Steve Seiler. I'm here today with Douglas Lee and his wife Pei Lu. Douglas is a Grand Master in the Wing Chun form of Kung Fu. And more importantly today, for our purposes of this show, he's the subject of a film about a philosophy of life that's peaceful and harmonious, and she developed out of 22 Kung Fu fighting idioms. Douglas calls this philosophy Xin Fa, or the path to the heart. Douglas is a disciple of Moyat, who in turn was a disciple of the famed martial artist Yip Man. As a grandmaster and teacher, he has taught 3 generations of students who now are throughout the world. His contribution to Kung Fu and Chinese culture is so significant that the People's Republic of China has recognized him and his disciples through a series of commemorative stamps. We're going to learn a little bit today about Douglas and Pei Lu, their life and his life as a martial artist, and his philosophy of life, Xin Fa, the path to the heart. Douglas, Pei Lu, welcome.
Thank you to have us here.
Yeah, delighted. So before we start, Douglas, you developed these fighting idioms into a philosophy of life. I think they're called Kun Kun, the way of the fist. Can you tell us what exactly is a fighting idiom and what is it used for?
Kun could translate back in the way of the fist. It is a set of idioms that pass down to us from generation to generation. My master Moyat, he crafted out this set of fighting idiom into the set of stones. That hopefully that will pass on to our next generations. This set of Kun is actually a fighting idiom that enhance our Kung Fu training. So this Kun now is training us how to create more courage and different strategy to enhance our fighting. And later on I discovered this Kun as another side into it, which is I call it the path to the heart, Sam Fat.
So these Kun are essentially strategies for dealing with specific situations, and now the Xin Fa takes these strategies and how to deal with situations in life.
In different situations, yes.
Thank you for the explanation. Now, Douglas, you've told me a little bit about your life, and to be honest, it sounds more like the plot of an action thriller than the history of a real-life person. Your mom and dad were American citizens of Chinese ancestry. They were in China in 1948, which was the time of the Communist Revolution. Your mom lost her passport, so your dad had to go back to the States to get proof of her American citizenship. At the time he left, she was already pregnant with you, but neither of them knew it. While he was in the States, the Chinese communists essentially won the Civil War and completely shut off China to the outside world. So a bamboo curtain came down. Your father's in America, doesn't even know if his wife is alive or not, let alone that he has a son. You and your mom on the other side of the bamboo curtain are left with very little money, no papers, no support, no family. And somehow you guys survived until about you were 8 years old and your mom decided to escape from communist China and swim to Hong Kong. Tell us a little bit about that escape.
That's actually the sad part of my young life. As I grown up, our life is very, very tough. And one day, my mother said to me, you don't belong in this country. You belong in United States, America. That's where your father is. And this is the first time that I heard that I have a father. And I didn't understand why she had to force me to learn how to swim. And I'm not much of a water person. But however, after I learned how to swim, one day she said, today we have to leave and we have to go across the border into Hong Kong so we could find your father there. And we walked a long, long distance and we come to this river and she pointed out the other side. That's where we can find my father. And as we got into the water, possibly about 50 meters or so, we heard a gunshot, and my mother got shot. My mother got shot on her arm, and we were so scared. And my mother said, we have to get to the other side before we get killed. And we swim, and swim. We finally made it the other side. And the police was waiting for us. The Hong Kong police was waiting for us because they heard the gunshot. The police took us into the refugee camp. Thank God, miracle happened. And that refugee camp, finally, we got hold of my father, which is I have never met, and we begin the journey from Hong Kong.
That's an amazing story, Douglas. But I understand it was in Hong Kong that you first started to study Kung Fu.
Yes. Back in the 50s, Hong Kong is because so much refugee went into Hong Kong. It's still not a good place to live. But however, I lived in Hong Kong and was very playful. And one day I hurt my arm and I broke my arm. And my mother said, "Oh, we have to take you to the bone doctor to reset this arm." So I went to the bone doctor, and as he's healing me, and all of a sudden I heard people in the back of the doctor's clinic, they're practicing self-defense. And when I discovered that they teach self-defense there, my heart just opens up. I said, "Oh, this is exactly what I needed. I need to defend myself because time was rough, and this is exactly what you needed." And my mother understood that. And finally, I did everything I can to convince my mother, and my mother agreed. So my life of Kung Fu start from that bone doctor. And I start learning martial art when I was 8 years old.
So just a chance meeting. Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, when you were 12 years old, you finally came with your mother to the U.S. and were reunited with your father. That must have been quite a change. How did you feel when you first got to the U.S.?
When I first I get off the airport and I look at the people from the airport, they're not Chinese. They're all different kind of people, and I never know what they are. You know, it's kind of shock to me. You know, this is America. You know, and for the first time in my life, I met my father, and obviously, you know, I go to school now because my father lived in Harlem, so I went to school in Harlem. And Steve, I don't even speak English. Never mind. I don't even know what ABC is. And here they put me in the 5th grade, and obviously I have no intention. You know, I have no idea what's going on. So the school is not good. I'm not good at my academic subjects. But however, because of all of my training in Hong Kong, and this is the only thing I know, so I turn my attention to continue practice my martial art. Because I don't speak the language, and kids over there, they start bullying me, and they push me around, they call me all kind of names, and that's how I got into my first fights in school.
So you actually used your martial arts training to take care of yourself in a very rough environment.
Defend myself.
So, as you said, you weren't that good at the academic side, and you poured your energies into the physical side, not just Kung Fu, but other things.
Yes. I remember when I was school, because I'm not doing too good in school, so all my subjects are just so-so, and some of them are failing. And however, the gym class was always my number one. So that gave me a lot of courage, you know, continue practicing. And I practice and I break all kind of school records. And all the way up to high school, I broke records, and I feel so good about that. Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Eventually, obviously, you become a master at Wing Chun. But that's not where you started martial arts, was it? You practiced a number of different styles before you eventually settled on Wing Chun. And did you get a black belt in all of these?
Well, Steve, I tell you, martial art to me is fascinating. I learned karate, I learned jiu-jitsu, I learned the Hung system, I learned plank mentis, and finally I settled with the Wing Chun, and I just love them all.
Now, why did you pick Wing Chun out of all of those?
For its simplicity and directness, You really don't have to train that hard, but yet you get a similar result. I love it because one of the reasons I study all different kind of martial arts, because I wanted to see which one really suits me, which one I felt comfortable with, and which one give me the most direct on a way of self-defense.
So you sampled everything.
Study everything.
And at some point you eventually opened a school and started to teach martial arts. Tell me about that and your students.
I love to compete, and I used to go to the tournaments and compete, and then I got into I got a little recognition then, and I become a referee in tournaments, and I got my name a little bit known out there now, so people decided to follow me and learn my type of Kung Fu. And that's why I'm beginning to teach. However, in New York at that time, there was a very famous chain martial art school, and they interview me, and they love what I'm doing. They see my speed, they see my agility, and they love it. They let me handle 3 of their schools. And that's how my teaching career began.
Did you teach just Kung Fu, or did you just teach a style that included some of the other things that you studied?
In the beginning, I teach different kind of martial art according to what the people needs. But however, because later on I did so much tournaments over there, and after I got some experience in teaching, I decided to open my own school to continue my Kung Fu career.
Douglas, you talked a little bit about being in tournaments. You were a fighter.
Yes. I was a fighter, and I was a referee, and I began to know a lot of people. And for some reason, the fighter and the instructors, they really never have any good personal life. And I look at them and I look at myself. I felt the same way. Why is my personal life is not good? I didn't understand why, because in my mind was just fighting, tournament, judging, and I still couldn't figure out at that moment why my life is not as good as I wanted it to be.
So the aggression from the fighting spilled over into other parts of other people's lives and your lives too.
Yes, yes.
Now, so here you are, a very accomplished martial artist. Yes, you're intuiting something's wrong with your life. You're on the wrong path. What happened to change that path?
My master, Moyat, for the first time in my life, he guided me what really Kung Fu is. In the beginning, I thought Kung Fu was just nothing but fighting, a set of fighting form and a set of strategy fighting. But he told me that's not so. Whatever you do in life wholeheartedly and you become good at it, we classify that as Kung Fu. For example, if you're a doctor and you're good at your healing and you heal people wholeheartedly and you become a good doctor, we classify that as good Kung Fu. Vice versa, if you're a lawyer, you do your job well, same thing. Carpenter and even a chef, as long as you do well in what you're doing, you have good Kung Fu. That's how I understand Kung Fu.
That chef has good Kung Fu.
Oh yes, it is a way of life instead of, in my mind, it was then just fighting.
So that's a big transition in the sense of Moyat taught you that it's not just limited to the ring, if you will, but you still weren't yet, developing your own philosophy, but you knew it was possible to use Kung Fu outside the ring. Was there anything else that helped you develop your philosophy?
Oh, I didn't even know what philosophy then was. But however, I met a couple. My godparent become my godparent, Joe and Emily Goldberg. And for the first time in my life, they have taught me the greatest lesson in my life. One day, Emily talked to me. She needed help to bring some toys to a children's leukemia hospital in New York. And I said, sure, of course I could help you. And we brought a few bags of toys. went to the leukemia hospital. And as I went into the hospital, I seen so many kids. They have no hair, and they look so sick, and they look so sad. And she says, let's help us give the kids a moment of happiness. Help me distribute the kit to each kids. And I started to take the gift and start giving to the kids. And then after I giving out the gift, she said, let's feed them some ice cream. You know, they are so weak, you know, they couldn't help themselves. Feed them for me. And Steve, I tell you, I have never fed anybody, you know, because I didn't have things to eat. I didn't have a good life when I was younger days. Now I see these kids like this, and I begin to walk over and fed one of the girl some ice cream. And Steve, the minute I see that that girl look at me with this sad eye, and I give them this ice cream. For that moment, she say thank you. Steve, that moment, it was the most exciting things in my life. It hit me right in the heart, because it's a simple fact is that I look at them, look at these children. They're so sick, and I look back at my life. This is nothing compared to them. And what I learned at that moment, that giving was just so wonderful. That is something I have never felt before. I'm sorry, I got a little emotional, but that was the greatest
it's a
joy.
Big turning point in your
yeah,
life.
It's huge.
How old were you at the time?
Somewhere around 20, 21.
Okay, so you're a young adult.
Young adult.
And in order to take the path of the heart, which you're teaching now, I suppose you have to open your heart, and they taught you how to open your heart.
That moment, I opened up my compassionate heart, which I never knew I had.
Now, Pei Lu, I'd like to ask you a question. How did you meet Douglas? And what was he like at the time?
Oh, we was a classmate, and we learned acupuncture together. That's how we met. He always has good heart, and he loves martial arts. He training very, very hard, and he's very capable. I witnessed he used his finger, go through and break the wood, 3 wood boards. And also, sometimes we walk around in the street, he make tumbles 8 to 10 times, just like in movies.
So he's a little bit of an acrobat. Now, you told us in Hong Kong you were a bit of a troublemaker, doing all kinds of crazy things. Apparently, you never lost that. So.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I still young at heart.
You find that pretty attractive, huh?
yeah,
The silly side
true.
of him.
That's true.
That's great. So Douglas is developing his philosophy of Xin Ta, the path of the heart. How did that change him as a person, and how did that affect you?
Yeah, it's big change. You know, after we married, he decided close the teaching. So we discussed a lot about the life, and he's no longer only concentrate on the fighting. He concentrate more in the heart and in the mind. And you know, we talk a lot about Simfa, and we learn Simfa together. So we become very close, and we love each even more than before. And we become soulmate. And he's very creative. He able to use the right idioms to help his disciples and his friends solve their problem. So we had very, very good business together, and we have wonderful, wonderful, happy family.
That's amazing. Now, you talked a little bit about all these idioms and using them. Douglas, tell me, when did you first think about applying these kun kun to things outside the martial arts area?
Well, as you know, Steve, when we train in fighting Kung Fu, there's a set of strategy that help us dealing with different situations. Now we're both in business now. Little that we know, we have another a different type of fighting, internally, psychologically. You know, it's that's
fight in the ring, and now you're
yeah, and
in
then all
business,
of a sudden
and
in
it's
business,
fight in business as well.
yeah,
But you can't hit him.
in a more peaceful way. And then I said, I didn't know how to do the business the way I'm supposed to teach. And I turning into this Kung Fu and see if there anything to help me. Steve, the more I look into it, I see the other side. It's so direct, so honest, and so compassionate, and you have to do the right thing in order to accomplish whatever you wanted to do. And I discovered this is all the right thing that our human relationship needed it. You know, and then I start learning business is all about relationship. And this teach us great relationships. And then when I beginning to use it in different strategy, in a good relationship way, in a most positive way, it works wonderful. It solves so many different problems. Of course, it does not solve the world problem, but our daily living type of problem, it was easy from Kung Fu.
Now, there are 22 idioms. Did you think about using them all at once, or did you experiment what fit with what situation and learn which idiom to use at which point? These are strategies, right? So you have to figure out which strategy works for what situation.
It's very simple. I narrow it down so simple way, and anybody can learn it. And not only they could learn it today, they will be able to use it tomorrow. And no training required, but however, you have to get used to it. And in the beginning, you don't know which one to use. But the strategy itself, it teaches you the different way of using it. So when you're beginning to use it, maybe the first day or the second day, you haven't got used to it. But once you get used to it, it is so simple and it's so easy.
So you talked about letting other people benefit from the philosophy that you've developed. You're a master, you're a teacher. Have you ever taught any of this to your students, and how did it affect their lives?
Well, first, after I learned this Sam Fat, I discussed with my
So she was your first pupil.
but there was some modification required, so we both discussed and how do we use it in our daily lives. And then later on...
So it developed as a philosophy between the two of you, back and forth.
Yeah, back and forth, and we make sure I'm doing the right thing, so that she'd be able to, because she's very smart in her own way, and we'd be able to do this together. So, and then I
developed this over time.
Yes.
Okay.
And then later on, because it worked so well in my friends, and I beginning to teach my friends whenever they have a family problem, and it works with them, and then I beginning to teach all my disciples how to do this. So
tell us a little bit about them. I mean, you must have had some very interesting, very capable people. Did it change their life the way it changed yours?
I like to talk to few of them. I have so much, so I like to talk to one of my disciples that has been following me for 40 years, and they have outstanding outcome out of it. This way of life, the first person I teach was Vinnie Thomas. He is like me in New York. He grew up in New York City. He's went into many difficulty in growing up in life. So I teach them the way of life, how to be friendly, how to be positive, and how to work hard. And all, this all came from the Sam Fat, and he's a changing person. In the beginning, he was so quiet, and people loved to pick on him, and he's not open. He's sort of like shut the door in the society. And now he's just a changing person. He laugh out loud. He be able to communicate with anybody comes along. And the second person is David Robinson. Now, David Robinson, I call him Park Avenue Kids.
What is Park Avenue Kid? Is it
well-to-do?
Well-to-do. So he came from a great background, very posh, and you came from a tough background.
Yeah.
That must have been an interesting relationship.
Yes. But however, his relationship with his father was absolutely disaster, and so I also taught him the way of life, and obviously he's completely changing, and not only he changed, he created a wonderful family together with his wife, loving children. They are so close together. It's completely opposite than he and his father. And because this way of life is so beneficial to him, he decided to pass on and teaching, follow my footsteps.
Well, that's interesting because, you know, in family relationships, you tend to repeat the one that you grew up with. So he was able to stop that cycle.
Yes.
And change it to a positive. So
yes.
He had a relationship with his children much different.
Yes.
Than he had with his own father. And it was through the practice of the path of the heart.
Yes.
Wow.
And then another person who's a doctor, Steve Faber, and Steve Faber is a full-blown MD, and he used one of the Sam Fat as he become a doctor. You know, so much competition in the city, and then he used the Sam Fat. For example, he used 人行功，我行緣. When somebody walk one path, I do the other. So he take his practice down to another state, and Steve, he create an empire for himself. He's a very good doctor. He has so much patience. He loves his patient, and the way of life. Then he discovers a lot more than that, and then he carried this Sam Fat, and I start teaching the younger generation. You know, as a doctor, is very, very busy, and yet. In the evening time, and he take his time to teach the public, teach his community, and this kung fu that he believed in.
So the Kung Kung changed his whole life. He went the other way, went to a completely different place, established a very successful life, and now because it was so profoundly affecting him, he's taking his evenings in training people.
Right,
that's amazing.
He's giving back to the society. And Paolo, Olympus is another very interesting. He's from Italy, and after he learned my entire kung fu, he went back to Italy, and single-handedly, he created he teaching the Wing Chun Kung Fu over there, and he built his own house, one piece at a time with his stone. Tremendous willpower. Tremendous influences into his martial art. He created a very beautiful family, and the culture that I taught him, he make the wooden man in our. We have a set of training tool. It's called the wooden man, and he craft out the wooden man so good.
That's just amazing.
I'm just so proud of him.
Well, we have 1 minute left, and I want to ask you why at this point have you decided to make this film?
My master passed on the Kun Kut and the fighting idiom. And when I discovered this fighting idiom, and there's another side to it. So I couldn't wait after he passed away. And then I said, this is my application to teach all my Kung Fu brothers, as well as my students. So I gathered all my Kung Fu brothers, his student, my teacher, and I want to pass this Kun Kut to them. So make sure that there's some Fat to them. So make sure they have another side of teaching, not just the fighting part, but yet the way to the heart into it.
So this is your method of passing on what you learned from your master, what you've learned through your life.
Right.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for coming here tonight.
Right.
I'm really, really looking forward to seeing the film.
Thank you so much, Steve.